Hey, podcast listeners, it's Savannah here, producer of Corporate Competitor Podcast. And as you know, Dawn and our entire team became part of the Maxwell Leadership family in 2022. Well, today you have the opportunity to become our teammates too. There are many of you who are listening right now who would love to launch your own business or start coaching other people. And we have a phenomenal strategy where you are 100% in control of your own business. When you become a Maxwell Leadership certified team member, you join a global community of entrepreneurs led by our expert team of mentors and faculty, including John C. Maxwell. Plus, you will get one of the top leadership certifications in the world next to your name, giving you the boost you need to get started. Visit us online at maxwellleadership.com/join the team to find out more information.
What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? They learned important lessons on the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. This is true for both men and women. Ernst & Young found that a whopping 94% of women holding a C-suite position played sports. Their wins and losses shaped their habits and who they would become. Join me on my journey to sit with some of the brightest executives in the world as we discuss how sports shape their professional trajectory. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, the voice of America's CEO community, I'm your host, Don Yeager, and this is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is the president of Cigna's U.S. commercial business, Mike Triplett. Mike leads the company's U.S. employer group business market strategy, sales, and local community engagement initiatives. He also leads Cigna's network partnerships, driving the company's work with local hospitals, healthcare facilities, and physicians to improve affordability, enhance quality, and enable a personalized customer experience. Now, before joining Cigna in 1998, Mike held numerous sales and leadership positions with IBM. He has received 4 national recognitions from Savoy Magazine as one of the most influential Black executives in corporate America. And today, I am excited to ask him how playing football at South Carolina State shaped him to become the leader that he is today. We put together fill-in-the-blank notes and reflection questions for today's lesson that you can download on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com/132. This free resource will help you apply Mike's lessons to grow your influence this year.
Your sponsor typically will find you. A sponsor is maybe a bit more of a senior individual that can make something happen for you. The key way you find a sponsor is, first of all, do your job. Your sponsors will figure you out. If they don't, introduce yourself to that individual. Make sure that individual knows who you are, knows what you do. You're walking down the hallway, just pop in someone's office.
Mike, thanks for joining us.
Don, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today.
I want to go old school. It was fun to look at some of those yearbook photos.
Yeah, very good.
It's also a reminder of how hairstyles have changed over the years.
Back then I had hair. Obviously, I don't have any today.
Rutherford Wildcat, class of 1979, voted most athletic at your high school. Reach back to that window of time. Tell me about what lessons you began learning as you were developing that maybe help you as a leader even today.
You know, as I reflect back, high school at Rutherford High, there were always various and different levels of talent. Not everybody had the same abilities. Not everybody could bench press 200 pounds. Everybody could run a 4.40. There's a big variance in talent. We had to figure out who could do what and bring out the best in everybody. Individuals get motivated in different ways, just like athletes do. For some individuals, it really is about calling it out and being on them every second. For others, it's more taking a coaching approach and a more subtle approach. There are things that they're going to be good at. There are things that they are going to struggle at. Find those things and motivate them, and always finish strong. It was a pretty hot day after practice. I was doing some individual running, some sprints and some quarter miles. I had run 3 quarters and I started to run my fourth quarter. I got about 3 quarters of the way through and I just stopped because I did not feel like doing it anymore. I practiced all day. I've lifted weights today. I've run 3 of these things. I'm just not going to finish this. When I came off the track, I had a coach that pulled me aside and just asked me, "What are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean, what am I doing?" "You just stopped." I said, "Coach, I'm tired." And he said, "Look, when it relates to life, if you start something, you finish it."
Mm.
I still do that today. I was swimming last week, was on that 49th lap. Didn't want to do number 50, but when I flipped the turn, I kicked it really strong because I wanted to finish strong. If you quit now, you're going to quit later. And so many times in business, we start off strong. We start off with really strong presentations. We think we've got it nailed. We think you've got the client sold, and you kind of slow down. You really can't do that. You got to stay in the moment until the last second. You have to give your very best performance.
I love that. Boy, what a great lesson from the coach.
Yes.
My 2 favorite words are compete, because it's an honor every day to compete, and finish. Doesn't do you any good to compete if you don't finish. You went on from high school to South Carolina State, one of the nation's most highly regarded historically Black colleges and universities. HBCUs have been in the news a lot over the last couple of years. Deion Sanders at Jackson and Hugh Jackson at Grambling. There's so many great coaches coming into that environment right now. I read an executive spotlight that Cigna did on you. You said your coaches taught you the importance of purpose, practice, excellent execution, and continuous improvement.
Yes. When you watch film in high school, you just kind of watch it. When you watch film in college, you actually study it and you become a master of understanding your opponent, your competitor, and you have to take that to heart. After we had played a game, we'd debrief on Sunday and we'd go through our mistakes and understand how you could do it better. The coach would always say, the eye in the sky doesn't lie, which is the camera up there.
Right.
You can say you made the block, but the camera will tell you really didn't make the block and how you were positioned. Take that and learn from it. And as you go through presentations, as you go through finalist meetings, you debrief afterwards to say what worked well, what didn't work well, where can we improve the next time. Have continuous improvement and improve yourself. We actually rehearse and we film the rehearsals. There's an eye in the sky. And when you can't do that, take the feedback and you have to trust the team member that you're with that they're giving you the appropriate feedback. Maybe you're not making eye contact. Maybe you're missing a very important point. Listen to the feedback, take that feedback in and learn from that feedback and be prepared to win. Sometimes we show up in business, we hope we're going to win. We think we're going to win, but we're really not prepared to win. Playing college football, I remember the freshmen, we would run through a number of plays. I was a running back. We had about 2 days of practice before the upperclassmen came in. A few days later, the vets got back. Coach said, "I want you guys to watch something." Some of the running backs took the ball and ran to the end zone, 40 yards away, 50 yards away. Every time they took a play, they ran it all the way to the end zone. Coach asks us, "What's different about what you guys did and what they've done?" They're running for a touchdown. They're preparing to win. They're running to win. We ran 10 yards and just kind of stopped and turned around. Part of winning is being prepared. It's not about knowing what everyone else knows. It's about knowing a little bit more. So when you show up like you're going to win, stepping up and saying what you got to say and saying it with confidence, saying it with enthusiasm, understanding the needs of that particular client. Carry yourself very differently. And it makes a difference when you see that client or that customer because they know you're there to win. Take the stage and take it a step further.
To the end zone.
Take to the end zone. It's not about knowing that, yeah, we spend $3.5 trillion on healthcare in the United States each and every single year.
Everybody knows that.
Yeah, it's about knowing that there are 4 or 5 things that drive that. Obesity related incidents, mental health, and substance use that drive those costs. It's not cancer. Cancer is a big thing, but it's not the thing that drives healthcare costs more. It's about diabetes and things like that. So it's about knowing a little bit more than your opponent knows.
And show up like you're going to win.
Yep.
I love it. You know, you actually began your career out of college with IBM. You held a number of sales and leadership positions. You were there 14 years before you joined Cigna.
Mhm.
Now, we see professional football players and now college players changing teams occasionally. But in the business world, you've actually been quite stable, 2 jobs.
Right.
In a time when everyone seems to be searching for the next stop, what's your best advice as you're talking to younger folks about staying, riding it out, and doing what it takes to be there for a long haul?
Times are different now. When I came out of school, the business world's a little bit different than those type things. Young kids, when they come out of school, they're not quite sure exactly what they want to do. I was fairly convicted that I wanted to get into business. I wanted to get into executive management. Understanding what you want to do and knowing what you're good at is paramount. If you're not good at something, making sure that you work at it and understand what your strengths are, where your weaknesses are. The key thing I find when people get into a work environment, they don't set the right expectations of themselves and they don't set the right expectations of their managers. There's got to be a strong two-way communication. As an employee, these are the things that I expect. I'm going to do this job for 2 to 3 years. If I do it well, when I come out of this, there's a high expectation that I want to go do this and move on to the next thing. Folks need to make sure that they understand that their managers understand that, and that their manager's manager understand that. You have to hold individuals accountable. It's not you give, and don't expect something in return. When you set the right expectations, things tend to work out better because then people know what you want. People know what it's going to take to keep you. When there's that good two-way communication, that good two-way streak of conversation back and forth about expectations and what it's going to take, you will find that you keep individuals a whole lot longer.
Boy, what great advice that is. It's amazing how many people we talk to who say that by 25, I had to have this title, and by 30, I had to be this. They've mapped out some career in their own mind.
Sure.
But if they're not articulating that to the people who can actually help make that happen, what a lost opportunity.
Absolutely.
What advice would you give to managers to help draw that out if somebody doesn't have the self-confidence to walk in and say, here's what I'm trying to expect?
It is our responsibility, number one, to know the people that we work with in our environment each and every day. When you come to work each and every day, it's like being on a team. You're there 8, 10, 12 hours a day. You got to know what makes them tick. You got to know what's important to them. It's not always about the business. It's also about the personal life. Know their family lives and history. Know how they're doing on the job and provide honest feedback. Understanding what those touch points are for those individuals and providing the good, timely feedback, helping individuals move along. As you are moving along in an organization, you're kind of moving up the corporate ladder, build a bridge. As you walk across that bridge, make sure that the people working with you and for you, you're pulling them along that bridge with you. You always want to have a full bridge. When your bridge is empty, you're standing on the other side all by yourself, then it's always been all about you. It really hasn't been about the team.
Always have a full bridge.
Always have a full bridge.
I like it. You know, 4 times you have actually received national recognition from Savoy Magazine as one of the most influential Black leaders in corporate America. You have a track record of working with small local businesses that are owned often by minorities and women to help accelerate their growth, to run your bridge with you. Clearly, diversity is important to you.
Yes, yes, absolutely. As we came through the pandemic, we recognize that there are very different healthcare needs underserved communities have. Communities where there are a number of sometimes Black and brown people that are in areas that aren't as fortunate, that are impacted by the social determinants of health. So we tried to develop a product that was very specific for individuals from underserved communities where there's a higher prevalence of high blood pressure, of cholesterol, of diabetes, of preterm birth, and to make sure that we had the right clinical programs that would address those very specific things. We really were the first in our space to develop a healthcare program that was very specified for minority owned and women owned, veteran owned businesses. As you set up your network of doctors and physicians, you wanted to make sure that they were bilingual, culturally competent,
Mm.
and that they understood the communities really that they worked in.
So that it's not just about their ability to speak the language, but to
You
understand.
got to understand the ways. You got to understand the cultural differences. A big issue in a number of our communities is just simple trust. Sometimes you say you want to give something to somebody. In certain cultures, when you give things away free, it has another connotation that says, I may get something free now, but I'm going to pay for it later some way.
They're gonna take something from me later.
Exactly. So you have to understand as you're serving particular communities what some of those cultural differences are and so forth.
Right.
We also rewarded those doctors for screening for the social determinants of health, for working on health disparities and things along those lines. We went into a community at one point and I got called out by a mayor. It says, look, you guys do a ton of business in our city here. You take things out, but you don't put anything back. We have a number of local businesses, a number of small businesses that are suppliers. Have you ever thought about working with our local businesses to spread some of that wealth around? It was a good lesson. We partnered with that community. We took a look at about 10 of those businesses. We actually brought those businesses into a mentoree program
Wow.
that helped them learn how to write better responses to RFPs in terms of what we look for. We've done that in a number of cities across the United States. We introduced a few years ago a program called Building Equity and Equality, a 5-year initiative to improve and expand and accelerate the efforts of diversity, equity, and inclusion at Cigna. As a part of that program, we did things around spending more time and more commitment to HBCUs. Now we make those individuals and businesses a part of our bids, part of our diversity and equity program, where we've increased our spend to minority and women owned providers, trying to get that up to $1 billion. So you've got to work with your community. You've got to work with local leaders. You've got to be a part of those communities on a go forward basis if you want to be successful.
Trying to increase your spend to $1 billion with those vendors.
That is correct.
That's spectacular. I also thought adding diversity is a significant conversation in all businesses today. I'm actually part of an event in Sun Valley, Idaho next week. It is with a lot of food and beverage companies talking about this exact subject. What counsel do you offer your colleagues in other businesses on building more diverse workforces?
It is very, very hard work. My organization is by no means perfect at this. You need to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you have to create a culture of belonging, create a culture of equity. The first step, if you ever want to advance your business, is to make sure that you have a diverse culture, bringing the best practices of an inclusive workforce into your own organization. Diversity also has to be a business priority. It has to be an important enabler of your company. If you're going to be successful, recognize that diversity, equity, inclusion really has to be at the top of your list. It has to start from the top. It has to start from your board of directors. It has to pass through your CEO, your executive team, and there has to be that level of commitment and accountability from those individuals as well. But then you also have to scorecard yourself. Look at the current talent that you have. How are you developing that current diverse talent? How are you going out and recruiting that current and diverse talent? People will tell you all the time, well, we can't find diverse candidates for these jobs. You're never going to find them if you continue to look in the same places. You have got to be very specific. You can look at HBCUs, you can look at traditional colleges and universities, develop relationships with their career and development centers, and have very direct conversations about talent, what kind of talent you're looking for, whatever it may be, being very direct, and then constantly measuring yourself as to how you're doing against your goals and objectives. Once you think you have it right, check yourself, go back and rethink it and do it again and again, because you can lose momentum. A lot of these programs, everybody starts out really, really strong. And then a year later, you're not quite at the same place.
Yeah. You talk often about the importance of a team having diverse talent, people who come to the table, different experiences, solutions, skill sets, and working together. Can you tell me about a time on one of your teams where you saw something pretty special because that different mindset was brought together?
Probably about 12 years or so ago, about 15 years, we were trying to get into a market. We had just not been successful. It was a city in the, I'm going to call it the cultural South. We went at it, we went at it, we went at it, lost, we lost, we lost, we lost. We finally sat down and had a good conversation with a few individuals there. And he goes, guys, you don't look like our community. You don't spend time in our community. We invite you to things, you don't show up. The only time we see you is when you want to bid something.
Mm.
We took a step back. It's a diverse community. We had good sales teams, but we didn't have somebody that was really good at relationships and not so much sales. So I recruited an individual out of New York looking for a change, looking to do something very different. Her whole thing was, I'm a relationship person. I don't know the numbers. I don't know how to sell this product or that product, but I do know how to bring people together. We brought her in. 3 years later, we had written probably 10, 15 pieces of business. That one market is where we have the largest market share of any markets across the United States, substantially, twofold, threefold more than we do in any other, simply because of the relationships with this individual and the cultural ability for her to tie what was going on in the community with the products and services that we had.
How blessed you were to have members of that community tell you,
Yes,
the only time we see you is when you want to bid on something.
very true.
Boy, you personally have done some work with one of my favorite people on the planet, Magic Johnson.
Mhm.
What have you learned from him?
I've learned a ton from Magic for sure. Our relationship goes back probably 20 years or so. The best thing about Irvin is that he is just down to earth. He is likable. You kind of get what you see. We've had a really good partnership with him at Cigna for a number of years now. He has been a great spokesperson for Cigna. He's obviously a strong businessman. He's a leader within his communities. We've been very fortunate to have him be on our side to make healthcare better and try to make a difference. It's always a thrill when clients get a chance to interact with him to get those perspectives. He actually sat down with a number of small businesses across the country. We facilitated a conversation with a number of local business owners in a number of cities. He talked with them about the challenges small businesses face, retention and acquisition of talent, diversity in the workplace, how to invest within the culture of their organization, and also the role that health benefits play within those organizations. COVID, even as you went through COVID, you could not get a lot of people in some of the underserved communities to engage with their primary care physicians. He's a trusted voice in those communities. He helped us across the country. He would come in with messages, whether they were in person, whether they were live, to talk about the importance of getting your checkups, your physicals, and those type things. And it made a tremendous difference in terms of our ability to engage individuals. And then he was a catalyst as we introduced our minority and women owned product first in Los Angeles.
Mm.
It's a partnership that continues. We look forward to working with him for many, many more years on a number of aspects of our business.
You know, a lot of other former athletes that are involved in successful businesses often seem to have a single-minded focus and this ability to summon a special energy needed in big moments. Did athletics provide some of those skills, those abilities to know when to harness yourself, focus yourself in ways that you've been able to use through this very storied career you have?
Yep. Some of the things that are just taken for granted, but they are so important when you think about the business world. I mean, just mental toughness, your ability to push through things and how you would face adversity on a day to day basis. Athletes have the ability to do that maybe a little bit better than others. Adaptability, the ability to adjust very quickly to situations because you have to adjust on the field very quickly to situations. And then work ethic. Michael Jordan said one time, he goes, look, I can understand losing. What I can't understand is not putting forth the effort or somebody outworking. Athletes have that kind of quality. They can handle pressure very, very well. Some of these things come natural to people, Don, but I think some of them can also be learned.
Mm, it's so important.
Some came naturally to me, but I learned a lot too in terms of how to pursue excellence and what it took to be good versus what it took to be great. There's a difference.
Yes.
My high school football coach, Coach Cipriani, who was always a big supporter, he pushed me, but he didn't push me that hard. But he kind of took me to the next level. When I got to college, my position coach, Jet Johnson, they called him Jet because back when he played college football, he was really, really fast. Those were the hardest, most frustrating times. He was tough and so demanding. He expected excellence from the second you stepped on the practice field to the second you stepped off of it. There was no second with him. It took everything sometimes just to get to those practices because of what you had to deal with Coach Johnson. But at the end of the day, I had more respect for that man after the fact because of that toughness. And then I'd also say my mom, I've never actually worked a hard day in my life.
Mm.
She grew up in the rural South and came from a family of three, herself and her two brothers, back when you didn't have a lot of African American folks going to college.
Mm.
And my grandfather in the late 50s was able to put three kids through college. They all graduated. That was something that was really unheard of at the time. You have to go back and put it in perspective where your parents came from, how they came up to support you to give you the opportunity to succeed. Because I'd never, ever kind of known this. I get emotional when I say this sometimes, but I'll get it out. Um, I'd always ask my mom, like, what did you do to make it, to make money when they were kids? From like age 7 to age 15, my mother she picked cotton
Wow.
every time. So when I come to work, I don't worry about how hard it is to go to work every day.
I hear it. I appreciate it. And thank you for sharing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You get to perspective and you think, my hands are not hurt right now. And that, allows your teammates to have some perspective.
That's right. And sorry for that, Don. It's just hard for me to say that sometimes.
No,
So
are you kidding me? I appreciate you being willing to dig in there because that is how we get to understand what drives really highly successful people like yourself. Thank you.
absolutely.
So I've asked this question for better than 2 years of every guest we've had. I talk corporately to organizations about building teams. Many of them, I think, inappropriately say we're a team. And the
Right.
truth is, they're just a bunch of independent folks with the same business card. They're all competing against each other. They're not really ever pulling for each other. You've been on teams, you've built teams. What are some of the elements that we need to make sure we're considering as we're taking that group of individuals and we're trying to mold them into something special?
There is no work environment that doesn't involve teamwork, whether it's an individual sport, whether it's track, whether it's tennis or golf. It doesn't happen without a team of people behind you learning how to participate with a team and understanding your role and understanding the overall objective. And you're right, teamwork is tough. As you form these teams, there is a role that each individual has to play, and the individual has to know that role. The quarterback can't win without an offensive line and receivers and running backs, and can't win without a good defense. Everyone has a role to play, and individuals have to understand the actual role that they play. In the business world, it's the salesperson wants to take all the credit for something.
Really?
Real.
You think salespeople take too much credit?
But based on a client's need, that salesperson is not always the most important individual in the room. And particularly in our environment where it's about medical and hospitals, and sometimes it's our physicians or our nurses that take and need to play a more prominent role. Individuals, they can step up when they need to. They also need to be able to step back. Folks have to be coachable. You can't have individuals that won't take the advice, take the feedback, and do what's needed, because at the end of the day, it is about winning. As an athletic, we have to win. And in order to win, everyone has a very specific role that they need to play, and they have to recognize what that role is and understand that it does take a village to win on occasion.
It's such an important point there that it's not just about everybody having a role, it's about them understanding it and being coachable because it's about winning. As part of your advocacy for working together, you encourage working with a sponsor. I call it mentoring all the time.
I guess when I think about mentors and sponsors, I really look at them as two different individuals. A mentor, think about an individual that's going to be there, somebody that an individual might want to talk to, might want to learn from, has very specific questions about the job and different aspects of the job. And that individual mentor helps roll that individual within the role that they're in. A sponsor is maybe a bit more of a senior individual that has the ability to move you through the business from point A to point B to point C to point D, that can make something happen for you. Not all mentors can do that. Some mentors can do that. The key way you find a sponsor is, first of all and foremost, to make sure you do your job and to excel at the current job that you're in. Once you do that, your sponsor typically will find you. If they don't, and it does happen quite often, you have to identify an individual that you want to emulate, introduce yourself to that individual, make sure that individual knows who you are, knows what you do. You're walking down the hallway, just pop in someone's office. They don't know you. Remember, I did that with the CEO of Cigna one time. I went by his office. I stepped in the office and introduced myself. Ed Hanway. I'm Joe Nobody.
Literally walked in on the CEO's office.
Walked in his gorgeous corner office in Hartford, Connecticut. I introduced myself to him. I told him what I did. And then he took time to sit there and talk to me. From that moment, as I walked up that executive row, every day I stepped into somebody else's office just to let them know who I was. I did my job. I did it well. And your sponsors will figure you out.
Boy, I had as a mentor a basketball coach named John Wooden.
Yes.
One day I was there watching he and Shaquille O'Neal spend time together for a story that I was writing for Sports Illustrated. And I asked Coach Wooden, I said, how do you become mentored by somebody as extraordinary as you? And he said, you ask. And I said, how many people ask? He said, not as many as you might think. So to your point, most people aren't walking in, sticking their head in, but that's the way.
Yes.
I love it. You're very big about everyone taking part in community service. In fact, you say that business success can make you forget that others may not be as fortunate as you are. What are some specific instances where incredible things have come out of that philosophy of pouring back into your communities?
I always try to approach a business where we're teammates, we're on the same team. I work with other individuals. I never say people will work for me. When I'm in the walls of Cigna, yeah, I am who I am. But the second I step outside of those walls, I'm just another guy walking down the street. My title doesn't mean jack to anybody else. When I walk into a building, I try to say hello to everybody. I don't just walk to the meeting room and too many executives just walk to a meeting room. They walk past 50 people and they don't say a word. Folks know you're coming in the building. What they remember is your back was turned to them. So making sure that you have that personality to do that, but really making a difference in the communities that we serve is so, so important. When you think about the socioeconomic status, the education levels, the neighborhoods that we get to work in, their physical environments, everyone doesn't have the same advantages. And just making sure that as we leave our footprint on a market, on a city, that we're doing the right things by that community. And we learned some hard lessons
Mhm.
where we didn't recognize that at first. And then allowing your workforce time off to go back and serve those communities and not penalizing them for taking a day or two of volunteerism to do that, because it's a very, very meaningful thing for communities around the country to give your time back. Make sure that you're always building that bridge.
Yeah.
So many of the coaches and my mom who helped shape my life, just make sure that there is a game plan that you have for yourself. Make sure you know how to set the right expectations, and make sure as a leader that you get the opportunity not just to work with your team, but you want to celebrate with your team, celebrate those victories. Winning is contagious, and make sure that you're recognizing individuals for the work that they put in. You don't want to do it for them. Sometimes you do have to show them the way, but once you show them and once they have it, constant reinforcement of those winning habits is really always the best thing from my perspective.
Mike Triplett, what an honor it has been to learn from you today, to be a teammate of yours today. I thank you for being a corporate competitor.
Don, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I had a great time.
Before I jump into my top 3 lessons from Mike's interview, I wanted to thank everyone who has jumped at the opportunity to connect with me on our website. I love hearing from listeners. So if you enjoy the show or want to connect with our team this year, I'd be so grateful if you filled out the form at maxwellleadership.com/Don Yeager. Okay, so let's review 3 of Mike's nuggets of wisdom. What a great story listening to him talk about his mother and about the perspective that she allows him to have because of what she went through to make college available for Mike and his 2 siblings. What she went through allowed him to constantly remember every day how blessed he is to come to work as he does. Perspective is such an important thing and is often lost for so many of us. My second big takeaway from Mike was around the difference between mentors and sponsors. We don't talk about this often. Having a mentor, great, someone to learn from, someone to grow from. But a sponsor is that person who can move you through the business, identifying who that could be, introducing yourself, sticking your head in the office, as Mike did, making yourself available. You have to be the one to ask. Really powerful, powerful lesson. And then finally, boy, what a great description about pulling others across the bridge with you. As you advance, always make sure your bridge is full of others who you are helping to advance as well. Making sure that you are not the only one growing and you don't look across the bridge and there's no one else there. Mike Triplett just left us with gold today, and I hope that you will enjoy it as much as I did. Thanks again today for being a corporate competitor. If you could share one habit, one thing you've done consistently that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors, what would it be? In my 30-year career, 2,500 of the greatest athletes, coaches, and leaders answered that question for me.
This is Don Yeager, who did that article I was telling you about.
Don, Dave Sims with Coach K. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing, my man? Great, sir.
What they gave to me is what I'm giving to you in my online course, Journey to Greatness. Through engaging storytelling and on-demand videos, you will learn the 16 habits that will jumpstart your personal growth. I will instruct you on how to apply these winning characteristics to your life through custom workbook exercises. We are slashing the price for our podcast listeners. Lifetime access to Journey to Greatness is normally $399, but for our podcast listeners, it will be $49 with the code podcast at checkout. Click the banner on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to enroll. Thanks for listening to the show. I would be so grateful if you left us a rating and a review. We will be rolling out a new episode every Wednesday. To be the first to listen, subscribe to the podcast on our website, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com. Plus, as a thank you gift, you will receive a free chapter from one of my best-selling books on the habits of high-performing teams. Stay in touch by connecting with me on social media at Don Yeager, Yaeger, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next week, I appreciate you.